Hi, everybody. Welcome to Discover College Soccer. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Coach Blahnik at Hope College up in Michigan. Welcome, Coach.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Congrats on your season. Nice run. Unfortunate ending in the tournament there,
Yeah,
but hey, it's good to be playing as late as you were. So you got to be happy with that.
yeah, definitely. I obviously we're as coaches we're competitive and we always want a little bit more, but I tried to kind of have a 24-hour rule before I try to think or say too much after a tough any type of emotional game, whether it's a win, loss, or draw. And I think yeah, once you get 24, 48 hours after, you can kind of start to see like, hey, we didn't necessarily maybe achieve everything we wanted, but we did achieve a decent amount that we were going for this year. And so I got to keep that in perspective. And like I say, I always tell our AD, I was like, hey, sometimes just like soccer sucks. And like, we maybe more than any other sport just lose a tough game that maybe we deserve to win or sometimes don't deserve to win, but we're right there. And, so is what it is. But no, we're happy with it overall, but obviously still wanted a little bit more and gives us that little fuel to the fire, I think, for the guys in the off season.
Well, and being a high level Division III men's program in terms of your recruiting that the season ends. I mean, how fast are you in recruiting? How much recruiting are you doing during the season? How much of your 25 class is
Yeah.
done already? Kind of where does that all stand for a D3 program like you guys?
Yeah, I think we're fairly far along in our 25s, maybe one or two more guys. And we have a larger roster, larger than I've ever had at any place I've been. But so it's not necessarily a need roster size, but just trying to find the right guys that fit not so much our program, but Hope College. I think we're a pretty unique school. And so honestly, it's very difficult for us to recruit during the season. I don't have any full-time assistants. I don't have any GAs. I have guys that help me out, but they work day jobs. And it's just a reality of our situation. But I'm also fairly involved in the club world and work camps, and I love it. Like I love to recruit. It's probably the first thing that attracted me to like deciding as a young coach whether I want to do this full time or not was I loved being on the road, meeting people, watching games, talking to parents. I just really enjoy that. So for me, I never worry too much about recruiting, not necessarily like in an arrogant way, but just because I get excited for it. And I think when you're at a good institution, there's always going to be opportunity to find players, whether it's in September or April. But this was my third year, and we've been pretty early each year on the class side of things, mostly because of how we do things, but also it's kind of like the nature of our school. I know when you talk to maybe some UAs or some NESCACs or some Ivies, it's somewhat similar to where, I most years I couldn't get a kid in April or May if I wanted to. If I could, it's going to take some time, So in a perfect world, I try to be 75 to 100% done by, end of first semester. Um, but I'm not one of those guys who's like married to a number. Like I get to 28 and I'm done. Like if the kid's the right fit and he can help us and it's a good fit for them, I'm always willing to have that conversation.
So with that timeline in mind, where is it that you like to go see players? What are your main haunts, places that are on that must-hit list every season?
Yeah. So Hope College, the institution, is a fairly desirable academic school and fairly well known here in Michigan and the Midwest. So we we have a lot of you know prospective student athletes who are already reaching out to Hope as a school. In certain areas of education, we're just outside the Ivy Leagues, in certain things. So we have a lot of PSAs that are already really interested in us. Um, so I will look and go anywhere, but I really can find for the most part what we need in Michigan or the Midwest. We have a strong Chicago contingent. I'm from Chicago. I spent my first part of my coaching career in Chicago. and we have a good amount of alums in Chicago as well. So I would say the overwhelming majority of our team is going to be it's going to be Michigan based, and then we're going to have anywhere from 4 to 6 Chicagoland guys, and then a few sprinkled in here or there. I don't have to travel a ton, but I still like to go and see what's out there. So mostly Midwest based, but doesn't have to be. It's just kind of nice. I don't necessarily need to leave the area to try to go find kids.
Okay. Well, you mentioned camps. Do you guys do your own or do you work others? How important are camps to your process?
So camps, I think from a recruiting's perspective, are they're important. We don't have a JV team, we don't have a reserve team. So like in my last program, we had a large one. So those camps were crucial to help fill that side of the roster at minimum. Um, Here it's we'll do 4 to 6 1 days a year. I did two within the last 4 weeks, and I cap them at 50. I make them as affordable as possible. And we tend to sell out all of those ID camps. One of the things that I would say that maybe once every 2 years are we seeing a kid for the first time at our ID camp and like, holy cow, offering you on the spot. You know, it's typically an opportunity for us to, try to invite some kids or talk to them about coming to ID camp who we've already chatted with, but maybe they haven't been on campus, or it's just like, hey, like I obviously like you, but it's important for you to like me and in our locker room and our field and my assistant coaches, you're checking us out just as much as we're checking you out. And so it's really kind of trying to get those kids that um, maybe we really like and we just want to get them on campus, and it gives us that reason to get them on campus for a specific date. Or it's those kids where we're not entirely sure. It's like, hey, we've seen just enough of you. We like you, but come check it out. And then honestly for us, it's because we're a fairly desirable academic school here. We get a lot of, the cold emails and things like that, to where it's just like, hey, we can't come see all of you. We can't watch every video clip that you send. In a perfect world, we could, but we just can't. And, here's an opportunity for you to come and be seen. And I think that's just a conviction I have as a person, is like, that's why I try to make it affordable. And that's why we try to offer enough. And that's why we cap those at a smaller number, is because I have to say no to a lot of kids, but I at least want to make sure, I can sleep at night knowing I said, hey, we're not trying to make a ton of money off of you, and we're trying to have a more intimate camp to where you feel like there's not 200 kids there, and that if we say yes or no to you, at least feel like we gave you a fair look, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Well, whether it's at camp or a tournament or something, what
Yeah.
what is it that makes up that hierarchy of things that you're looking for in a player, both on the field and on?
Yeah, I think it's changed a bit for me. I spent my first part of my career, I was head coach of my alma mater, Olivet Nazarene, which is a Chicagoland NAIA program, and I recruit fairly differently here than I did there. For us to be a successful NAIA program, I had to mix in a few of the international academy type players, while still not becoming all that. But for me here at Hope, you know, I, it's really important for me to find kids that want to be at Hope for more than just Hope soccer or more than just to play for me. I think that's part of having a good culture and a program that you can kind of rely on to take care of itself when you're not around, if that makes sense. Is that if they have things to do and they're a part of campus, they're a part of the things outside of soccer, that's only going to be helpful. So, it's important for me to find that. Now, obviously, I'm looking for, good soccer players. An old, coaching mentor of mine, told me one time, when you're a young coach and it's hard to say no to people, you don't want to hurt their feelings, is like, hey, you just got to remember, you can't take a mule to a horse race. It might be the hardest working, nicest mule out there, but at the end of the day, like, you got to make sure they can play. So I'm really looking for guys who you can tell want to grind on their own, whatever that means. That can be maybe in warm-ups, that can be within a game, that can be, effort, how they talk, how they're looking off the ball. But guys, I really don't want to spend time at this level having to like try to constantly persuade guys. I don't care how good you are. If you're the state player of the year, you score 1 million goals. If I feel like I'm gonna have to spend a lot of my time wanting you to be a gym rat when you're not already a gym rat, then it's probably not the best fit for me, but also for them, you know. So guys who you can tell, like I use the phrase gym rat a bit, you know, I'm from kind of really from Indiana, but like guys that want, I don't have to worry about them in January. I know they want to grind without me having to tell them anything. You know, they want in a weird way, they want the challenge of preparing for the fitness test, you know, and sometimes you can kind of just, you know, see that within a kid. So, but the actual soccer side of it, you know, I'm typically looking for guys who are aware, like off the ball, recognizing transition moments, guys that are kind of already those things that sometimes can be hard to teach. I'm seeing those because I always feel like I can get them a little cleaner on the ball. I can teach them how to defend well, but it can be pretty hard to teach that other stuff. So I'm more so looking at work ethic, how they're interacting with people, how they respond to the mistakes that are happening, how they respond to the difficult circumstances. And then obviously are already a pretty decent player. But I more so look at that stuff than counting passes and doing all those types of things, which by no means I think are wrong. It's just not the way my brain works. Um, and so it varies, you know. So, but I'm open. I'm kind of always trying to evolve and not just be married to one style of player. So that's kind of the way I look at it right now, or at least at this point. Maybe that answer changes in a year. I don't know, but it's worked for me here, and it's worked for me at my last place. So I'm kind of sticking with that.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the school. Some folks maybe not familiar with Hope.
Yeah.
Um, you've been there for a few years, you said. So what are some of the things that you found about the school that are outstanding? Some things maybe folks wouldn't even know by going through the website.
Yeah. So, you know, Hope College is in Holland, Michigan, which is, you know, and I'm not from here. Here's what I say. I was head coach of my alma mater and I wanted to be here. And I love my alma mater, but I wanted to raise my family, my wife and kids. We wanted to be on Lake Michigan, Holland, Michigan, downtown Holland's.
Okay, so do
Yep.
the hand test.
Yeah. Well, since I'm not a true Michigander, I married into it, which the nice thing about marrying into it is when it's cool to be a Michigander, I can be a Michigander. When it's not, I just say it's my wife's state, you know.
I,
So
I did the same thing. My wife's from
yeah.
Detroit, so I got you.
Okay, you get it. So we're only about 2.5 hours from Chicago. We're kind of just over the Indiana border. You're on your way to Grand Rapids. Um, but Holland, Michigan has won numerous national awards for, you know, best tourist city, best weekend getaway. We're part of 8th Street downtown Holland, which is just one of the coolest things. So like we're very confident if we just get a kid on campus, he can kind of maybe see the difference in that right by the lake. About 3,500 students, undergrad students, give or take. We don't have post-grad. That's why we're still a college, Hope College. And we got, you know, 90 to 100 majors. So we can pretty much offer anything. I did have a kid, one of my first times here. I was talking to you the other day and he really wanted aviation. So that was really like the first time I was just like, hey, best of luck. It's probably not a good fit for either of us. But typically we have everything you need. We're nationally ranked in like different types of research and engineering, fairly academic school. We are a foundationally faith-based school, the Reformed Church, but I would say it's not. It's you know it and you notice it when you're here, and it's an important part of who we are. Um, but it's not similar to some of the other ones that you may think of as far as I want to be careful what word I use here, but rules or legalistic, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
I'm comfortable saying that because I went to a more strict religious school and I coached and worked at one before. But you know, so I think you're coming here because of that. You're coming here because of Holland, Michigan, the location by the lake, downtown, you know, cool area, close to Grand Rapids, high academics. And it's very well respected as far as whatever you graduate in are, you know, assignment rates as far as whatever they, you know, workforce they want to get into are pretty impressive. And, you know, I would say that I've yet to really come off to meet an alum who isn't like, yeah, I want to send my kids there, you know, so, but and we have amazing facilities. I think we have one of the best college soccer facilities in the country. It's a beautiful field, soccer specific, you know, brick building, tree lining, behind the scoreboard, which you get the beautiful fall leaves. second half of the season. I think it's just a really, really cool place to be and a cool place to play.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like it. Well, as you mentioned with the high academics, for kids coming into college, making that leap to dealing with high academics and, being a college athlete can be a challenge. Kind of what support systems does a school offer to make sure those student athletes are successful in the classroom, but on the field as well?
Yeah, we have several like probably most schools do. Um, but ours are I would just say this, the person that kind of heads up our student athlete, Center for Student Success was a head coach here for a long time. So the school here is really there is a really good merge between athletics and the rest of the school. I know at some places there's almost a separation of, oh, it's athletics, oh, it's everybody else. Here, there is almost a mid-major Division I level feel as far as support at our games. In most of our sports, we rank in the top 10 and D3 in attendance and things of that nature. And, if you look at it, we've got several top 10 or national championship type teams. So with that kind of, being said, there are several positions. So we have like an admissions liaison for athletics who was the wife of our former baseball coach, who has spent her whole time, coaching with her husband. Our head of Center for Student Success for athletics is our former softball coach. So for us specifically as student athletes, it's I think most places have those, but I do think that ours are fairly unique, or at least I know they work really well here because there are coaches kind of leading the charge for that, or former coaches leading the charge for that, which makes an easy bridge for them to connect with our student athletes. They understand what it's like to be on the road and not maybe be a starter or get injured and then not play or whatever that may be. So I think we do a good job. It is a fairly academic school, so most of the students that are already coming here are have proven one way or another that they're able to handle academics. Now every kid obviously deals with becoming a freshman for the first time, and maybe it's I think in a place like Hope, those that do struggle a bit, it's less about the actual academics and it's more about adjusting to being away from home and college life and all those types of things. So but we just try to stay ahead of it. We do a 2 week or a 3 week check at the beginning of every semester just to make sure everybody's you know not not falling off or anything like that. And those that are, we stay pretty active with them. We just do a lot of encouraging. Like we really do. It's part of our recruiting pitch. I think if you ask anybody that I've recruited here at my last school, they'll say it may be one of the more unique pitches they've heard as far as the things I talk about versus what they're expecting me to talk about. But it's typically that we're big believers in that if we encourage and help motivate for all of our student athletes to, uh, in a general cheesy sense, be the best person they can be, then they'll end up being a better soccer player rather than the other way around, rather than only worrying about soccer and then like a fear-based, like, hey, you better have good grades or you're going to have to run sprints tomorrow. Ours is kind of that, hey, if you're killing it in your academic life, you're killing it in your personal life, if you're taking advantage of the non-soccer things at Hope, you're going to come to practice for 2 to 2.5 hours a day. You're going to come to training free of mind, more mature, excited, which then means we can really worry about being better soccer players at that point. So I've yet to really deal with in 3 years a lot of academic issues, to be honest. And when we have, we notice them fairly quick and we're able to try to intervene and help as quickly as possible. I know that was kind of maybe a long-winded answer of it, but there are definitely like school resources and then like the things that we kind of just do within our own program. And it's more about trying to stop the issues before they happen or help encourage so the issues don't come up.
Okay. Well, rewind back to October, kind of the heart of
Yeah.
that MIAA season.
Yeah.
Walk me through a typical schedule uh, for for your athletes, winter classes, meals, game cadence, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm big on like consistency for them. So we try to do, and that's obviously a question that comes up, I think, or it should come up from recruits is when we practice, how much class we miss. I think my first year I took over, I took over from Coach Brandt, and I was an assistant coach with Coach Brandt for a year back in 2019. And we have a smaller league and it can be a little more difficult to find non-conference games here. So we kind of have to, that first year, we had a pretty difficult travel away schedule as far as missing class. So right away, it was one where I was like, hey, we want to miss as little class as possible. So that's big for us, but we're going to train every day, 3:15 to 5 or 5:45, consistently with that. And then we want them to go be students. And we're rarely missing class for games. I think this year we had 3 days where we missed class, and it was really only if you had class after noon. Obviously we had we miss a day of class when we go play ONU and Ohio Wesleyan. And then we miss a day or two of class when we're in the national tournament. But besides that, it's very important for us to miss as little class as possible.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the team. I mean, I know you
Yeah.
mentioned there's no JV or secondary team there, but in terms of roster, what is the number that you kind of like to be around?
I would say in a perfect world, I'm 30 to 32, with four of those being goalkeepers. Um, this year we had a bigger roster. We were closer to 34, 35. We had a couple of guys who had, injuries either in the spring, summer, or things like that. Um, my first year here, I decided I kind of switched middle of the season, decided to have about 3 times the size of a recruiting class that I was thinking I would, and brought in a really large class year one, just to kind of try to, all great guys over here, but kind of change the culture a bit in the sense of, some guys, they were players that helped us as far as players, and some they helped the culture, they helped the training environment, they helped the locker room. So right now, this year, we were at, I'll say 34. But the goal will be to kind of trim that down. But honestly, like, a lot of people think that's too big, and it can be sometimes logistically with only one team. But if you ask anybody in our program, nobody will say they felt like they were forgotten or they didn't play a role. Um, I probably spend more so than anybody else really trying to make sure the guys that, are technically on the end of our bench are guys that bring value in other ways. And then I'm extremely honest with them about that role before they decide to come here, which I think is why you maybe, if you spent a week around our team, I think you'd probably notice, not saying we're the only good culture team, but I think you'd notice something kind of cool and unique about our culture. I think it's because of that, but it's not always simple, but the goal is to get it back down to 31 to 32 probably next year and kind of stay right around that point. I
Okay.
always like to be able to have enough field players to play 11s if we can. And obviously it's inevitable that you're going to have some injuries. So as long as I feel like we have enough to where we can do that, um, then that's kind of the number I'll go with that year.
Okay. Well, talk to us about your coaching style and the style of play that you like to play there.
Oh, I'd say it's ever evolving, but I've coached club, college, some USL too, and I'd say I coach those all different, you know. So I kind of view, I was a full-time coach for 12 years. I got out of full-time coaching for 3 years, worked in the sports business world, and got back into full-time coaching. So that kind of changed my perspective on a few things, as far as that. And so, like, I'm extremely competitive and want to win, but part of the reasons I got back into full-time coaching was I kind of missed all the other stuff. I was coaching MLS Next and all that, so I was fulfilling the soccer side of it, but um, I think I'm really trying. Yeah, I want to help these guys be better soccer players and win games, but I'm really trying to also like hold them to a standard to help them be successful, men when they graduate. So, I think when I talk about coaching style, I would say the biggest words are like disciplined and mature. We talk a lot about being, it's easy to say we're the hardest working team in the country or we're going to win every game. Like everybody says that, but like we really believe we can be the most mature team in the country. Um, so we have a really high standard in our training of that. But I would say extremely disciplined defensively. Most of our teams have been top 10 or top 20 in most defensive categories, here and then at my last school. That's not a low block, blah, blah, blah. It's a we're going for it. We're going to defend most situations full field. It's less about where we're defending, and it's more about the decisions and the risks we take in the areas of the field. Um, and so we feel like we defend extremely well. which allows us, so extremely disciplined. Like you want to see, I'll get on guys if they're not following our defensive rules. Very rarely will you see me get on guys if they make offensive mistakes. So it's very much a like, hey, extreme defensive discipline so we can get the ball, so we can have the ball, so we can transition, and then let's go for it when we get it. So we like to play. We like to play to feet, but not a ton of tiki-taka, short passes, things like that. If they're there, they're there. But we're looking to play quick, switch the field, get the ball into the offensive middle third to the offensive third as quickly as possible, and then that's where we'll try to move the ball and maybe try to break you down at points. I've kind of changed a little bit. I'm not a big believer in just like hitting in low percentage crosses based off of who we're playing, their center backs or keepers. So we'll try to move, and I'll try to get guys in the middle of the field that can dance on the ball a bit and go 1v1. And then we score the majority of our goals within the 18, cutback balls, things like that.
Okay. We've given us a lot of info. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Going to leave you with
Yeah.
one last question, and that is if you had one piece of advice for student athletes going through this recruiting process right now, what would that be?
Um, don't be scared to ask questions and, really try to find a place where you don't have to love, I call it all four areas. So like faith or greater purpose. Even if you're not religious, you should have a greater purpose, like besides selfish desire, social aspect, the academic aspect, and at least the athletic aspect. And I say it in that order. And I just try to tell kids to make sure they see it being a good fit. In a perfect world, all four are A pluses. That's really rare. I think there's only a few places that probably really offer that. But you should hope that you're checking off two or three of those, because in a 4 or 5 year process, things on the field aren't always going to go perfectly well, and make sure that you can find yourself enjoying kind of those other areas of the school. And I think ask those questions. I often tell kids, because I help with recruiting, I often tell kids like, hey, if the moment a coach starts guaranteeing you anything, run, like run. The moment a coach guarantees you're going to be a captain, all-American, blah, 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 you're going to start, I'd run, because you're likely going to find out they're telling that to pretty much everybody else. So just ask questions and remind them that you're also looking at them. They're not just looking at you, so make sure it's a good fit, and feel like they're really challenging you with the questions they're asking.
Absolutely. Really appreciate
Yeah.
it, Coach. Well, hey,
Yeah.
thanks again, and wish you the best of luck as you wrap up that recruiting class, and hopefully we'll see you in that national tournament again next year.
Great. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.